Um, is this something that's been with us all the time? Is it a modern manifestation brought about by the media? Because I've heard some people saying that this has become sort of sexy or attractive to young people because of the likes of Angelina Jolie saying that she does it, or you know, musicians saying that they do it. You know, what's the cause of this? Why would somebody inflict pain upon themselves?
Well, cutting has always been around, particularly cutting.
Yeah.
Has always been around, and often it occurs in the context of very deep interpersonal problems. That's sort of one group. But there are another group for whom I think it's used just as a stress reliever. And to the extent that they do that rather than kicking a door or throwing a tantrum, I think it's probably partly due to it being fashionable. I think there is that element for a group of people. I certainly know in my son's class, I was talking to him about this a few years ago and asking him if many people cut themselves. And like you say, a lot of his friends were doing it. And they weren't troubled or distressed by cutting it, by the fact that they cut themselves. They didn't see anything unusual about it. You know, it was no different from, as far as they were concerned, throwing a tantrum. And they would do it perhaps once, and that was it. It wouldn't happen again. But there are a group of repetitive cutters, and that group often have, as I say, major problems, often childhood problems, or often problems at home with parents and with peers, perhaps bullying sometimes. And it's a sort of a behavioural way of expressing distress. Young people find it difficult often to express themselves, particularly boys. They don't talk. As a mother of a teenager and a young adult boy, I know how awkward it can be for them. And so rather than articulate and say, you know, I'm upset and I'm distressed, they cut themselves, as do young girls as well. Again, for the same reason, they find it difficult to voice their distress because it's not cool to be distressed, and they're a worrying group because they often repeat it. But the most common problem that we come across in the accident department is overdosing. Overdosing, yeah. Overdosing with whatever medication, aspirin, paracetamol.
Whatever painkillers are available around the house.
Whatever they can get in the house, yeah. Laxatives even sometimes.
Really?
Yeah.
Overdosing.
Without knowing they're laxatives, they just take tablets if they see them in the medicine cupboard.
It's a really unpleasant surprise when they discover what they've taken.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you treat that as a serious suicide attempt, or more as you've just said, a lack of being able to express what's actually going on?
It depends the context in which it happens. And if somebody comes to us having overdosed with a recent history of, you know, a lowering of mood, maybe falling off in school performance, poor concentration, that kind of background, coupled with what the person is saying, how they say they felt, did they leave a suicide note, you would treat it very seriously. If it occurs as a result of a row with a boyfriend or with a parent, which is the more common context, I think you would regard it as a difficulty in coping rather than an illness or a disorder per se. And so the level of concern that it might lead to suicide would be much less than when it occurs in the context of change, an ongoing change in behaviour and ongoing low mood.
Another problem that some people would see as being linked to self-harming would be eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia, these types of problems.
Yeah.
Again, these seem to, I suppose, present probably more in girls than they do in boys.
Yes.
And obviously linked into the body image and things like that. How do you begin helping somebody or even talking to somebody who's presenting with that type of disorder? Because it really does affect your whole perception of reality.
I have to say, I have no skills in treating eating disorder people. I attempted to acquire them, but it just was something I just didn't have the wherewithal.
Really?
No, I find people with eating disorders very, very difficult.
Why?
I think I was struck by the terribleness of the condition and almost, what's the word I'm looking for? The sort of lack of insight when I was asked to see a young woman in her 20s who was terminally ill with cancer. And she had had an eating disorder as well before she developed cancer and got secondaries and was literally dying. And she still wouldn't, and she was, because she was terminally ill, she was cachectic, she was very, very thin. She was about 6, 7 stone in weight, even though she was, 5'2". She was quite small in stature. And so she was skin and bones, and she still wouldn't eat, and she didn't even want to drink water in case it would gain weight. And I remember the oncologist who was treating her saying to me, should we certify her and force feed her, or will we leave? What will we do? Because if she doesn't drink, she's going to die of dehydration. Or what should we certify her and force feed her? And I discussed it. We just both discussed it with her family, and we decided ultimately we wouldn't do anything. She was in hospital dying. She died 3 days later. Whether it was from dehydration because of her anorexia and malnutrition because of the anorexia, or whether it was the cancer, we'll never know. But that was the decision we made, that you really shouldn't certify a terminally ill person. If she were a young, healthy, otherwise healthy man or woman like you here, it would be a very different matter. But she wasn't. And that struck me as, goodness me, I have no skills in that area. As I say, it's a very long-term treatment. The prognosis isn't good. People with eating disorders, often many of them survive but continue to either binge or starve themselves. People who binge eat actually do better than people with pure anorexia. But it's a very difficult condition to treat. And I would always refer people on to somebody who has expertise in that area.
People often don't realise that anorexia can be lethal. It can kill you if not treated.
It's got about a 15% mortality rate. About 15% of people with anorexia nervosa die. Yeah.
I was talking to somebody this morning just about the fact that you were coming down, and he was talking about Carl Jung's concept of the collective consciousness, that we're all, our subconsciouses or our personalities are in some way linked. And, he was saying that he feels that Ireland at the moment is going through kind of almost a group depression as a result of the recession. Everybody's a bit kind of down in the dumps and sort of long-faced or whatever, Do you think that there can be periods in the history of a community or even of a nation where disorders like that are likely to be on the up because of poverty or social forces or whatever? Is that something you've experienced? Do you get kind of rush periods in your practice?
I mean, I'm not sure. I would